folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natasha and I do book things here. Still sick, my voice is shit. Didn't feel like doing anything with my hair today, so it looks like this. Forgive me. This is my February wrap-up. I'm going to talk to you guys about all the books that I read in the month of February, give you guys my stat breakdowns, my little charts and whatnot. I did read 13 books in the month of February, which I'm really happy about because some of these are quite large. Honestly shocked that I managed to read as much as I did. A lot of those days in February were spent doing other things and whatnot, so I definitely didn't read every day, so I'm honestly shocked that I read as much as I did. I read 13 books. That equals out to 4,898 pages, which is very similar to what I read last month, even though I think I read more books, so that's interesting. That averages out to each one of those 13 books is 376 pages. And it equals out to 174 pages read a day, which is very high. Once I hit sort of like past 150 pages a day, I consider that really high. So yeah, read a lot of stuff pretty quickly. So next I'll get into my star ratings. I didn't rate any books 1, 1.5, 2, or 2.5, so all the books that I read this month were 3 stars and up. So that means that in my wrap-up, once I get into breaking down the books, just know that I didn't think any of these books were bad in any sense of the word. Some of them were just average, and then the ones that were above sort of a 3, 3.5 I thought were really good. So I'll put my little chart up here. So I had 2 3-star books, 2 3.5 stars, 6 4-star books, 1 4.5, and 2 5-star books. So a really solid month. It ended up being a 3.96 in terms of ratings for the month. So almost a 4-star month, which is very, very good. Oh, with listening, I listened to 1 in audiobook and 12 physical. I think I actually listened to more than that. Like, I have the physical book here, but I actually listened to 2 of them in audiobook, even though I didn't finish them. I don't know why I only put 1 in, but I definitely listened to 2 in audiobook format. For my age group, I read 7 YA and 6 adult. I think that factors into why I may have liked this month a little bit better. I tend to actually rate my YA reads pretty high, because some of them are really fucking good, so just saying. Alright, let's get into my genres, which maybe not as interesting as last month, but fun to look at anyway. So I read 5 contemporary, 1 dystopian, 2 romance, 1 horror, 1 sci-fi, 1 other, which is manga, and 2 graphic novels. So kind of an interesting mix of stuff. Obviously my 5 contemporary is because of Contemporary-thon. Even my 2 romance books in that were actually sort of contemporary romance as well. And then I like telling you guys my years. So I had 2017, 16, 2015, a 1983, which is my oldest one, which is my Stephen King. A 2019, which is good because I have not been reading enough 2019 releases. 2017, 2018, the second 2019. 2009, 2015, 13, 15, and 17. So a lot of books in the last 5 years, that one older one being my Stephen King, and then 2 2019 releases, which I'm trying to stay somewhat on top of. Although honestly, I've been really enjoying reading backlist books this year, so I don't know how that's going to continue throughout 2019, how many new releases I end up reading. We shall see. But yeah, that is an overall breakdown of my stats. I hope you guys like my little graphs and charts and stuff. Really fun for me. But now I'm gonna get into the 13 books that I read this month and tell you guys what I thought about all of them. I'm gonna start from my 3 stars, work my way up to my 5. But like I said, just know that I liked all these books enough to give them 3 stars. Nothing was absolute garbage this month. The first book that I rated a 3 is a graphic novel series. This is the first volume, and this is Paper Girls Volume 1. I found this for cheap at Value Village, picked it up, tried it out, and I have issues with this. Even though I rated it average because I enjoyed it sort of averagely, really what I rated it highly on was the art style. There is a pterodactyl in it, which I was like having flashbacks to Hot Pterodactyl Boyfriend. I was like, another book with pterodactyls, huh? Okay, they must know. Me, the pterodactyls. But no, this book, the art style and the colors and stuff are gorgeous, but what I didn't care for was the storyline and the writing. There was a lot of usages of language, even though it's set in 1988, that I don't need to read. If a book was written in 1988 and it has that language, I can forgive it. But the fact that it's written, pretty modern, and then has like, I think it's just like the R word, the F word, and like stuff like that, just slang terms that like I don't want to read on the page. Like I just don't want to read that shit anymore. It was sort of upsetting. I also don't really know what the hell is going on. So it starts off, it's 1988 on Halloween night, and there's a paper girl, doing like a paper route, like a paper boy, but it's paper girls, and they get sort of bullied by this group of boys, and then like a bunch of weird shit happens. And I get it that they're setting it up for future books, but like, I don't know what the hell is happening. Wasn't really captivating enough to keep me wanting to read it. I enjoyed my experience while I did, but I don't think I'm going to continue with this series, unless of course I stumble across like volume 2 for cheap or something like that, then maybe I'll continue on, but I'm not like gripped to continue on. But I didn't, somewhat enjoy my reading experience while I did read it, so that's why I'm giving it a 3. Next 3-star is a romance that I read during Contemporary-a-thons. You guys probably have heard my deeper thoughts about that during those vlogs. This is 99% Mine by Sally Thorne, and I really had high hopes for this after reading The Hating Game. I really did like The Hating Game quite a bit. I had issues with this one in that I didn't like the main character. I think her name is Darcy. Yeah. I just feel like she was written very, like, I don't want to say one-dimensional, because she did have some layers, but just very like, I am tough, I am a badass, look at me go, don't fuck with me. And it's just like, I don't know, I grew up around badass women in the same sort of like field. Like she's a bartender, kind of like dealing like a biker bar. Like I know biker women, they're not this chick, I just feel like she wasn't written accurately to her sort of like toughness. The romance in this was like a slow build, and like honestly I kind of wanted more sex. Like yeah, there's a lot of tension between them, they've had crushes on each other for years, but like I wanted more of the action, When the action happened, it was fine, it was dandy. The male interest in this Tom, what a bean, loved him. Really, that sort of balanced out my rating for this book and why I gave it a 3. Do I think that it's worth a read? Like if you're looking for, a contemporary romance kind of book, yeah, just know that you're not gonna get like mind blown by the characters, except Tom is great. So, I mean, if you're looking to be a little horny, then it's gonna do the job, Next 2 are 3.5 stars. This one was one that I picked out of my TBR Star Jars for the month of February. Did not think I was going to read it this month, but actually enjoyed it, and happy to say it was a tome. So I can like chuck another tome off my list. I'm trying to read like 2 books over 500 pages each month, just to try to like get some of those out of the way, because they do intimidate me. This is one of them. This is The Ask and the Answer by Patrick Ness, book 2 in the Chaos Walking trilogy. Now, I'll be honest, I did have to go back to the first book and sort of read the last like 50 pages to remember where it left off, because it did leave on a cliffhanger, and starts right up, like right where it ended, this book starts. Like it literally is like they had, say, 1,500 pages of book, and it was like this one stops here and then this one stops here. So you really do have to read them all together consistently, because this one stops kind of like right as something is about to begin as well. And so I'm definitely compelled to keep reading the trilogy. I just don't know when I'm going to get around to purchasing the 3rd book, because I don't actually have it. So I'm going to be taking a look, trying to find them at like used bookstores and whatnot. This, without too many spoilers, I can't really, I'll give you the premise for the first book, because this one is continuing on in the second one. Basically this follows 2 people, Tom and Viola, who they live in this sort of like dystopian world where the men can like hear each other's thoughts and the women can hear the men's thoughts, but then the men can't hear women's thoughts. It's kind of all sort of based around that. So it picks up, boom, where the first book left off, and a bunch of shit happens. I kind of really enjoyed this actually, and like it was compelling and I kept reading it and it went by like really quickly. Second book, can't say too much about a second book, don't want to spoil the first one. So the next book that I have here is a graphic novel that I picked up completely on a whim. I had credit at my used bookstore and I saw this and was like, what the frick is this? I needed to get it. So this is a graphic novel called Plastic. According to this blurb, this is the weirdest shit I've ever read. I love it. The creator of The Walking Dead. So you know it's going to be pretty weird. This is a graphic novel that is in its entirety is just this. So this, it only exists in one edition. Does that make sense? It's a standalone graphic novel in this little format. But this follows a retired serial killer who is going on like, I guess, a road trip with his girlfriend, and they like eating donuts and stuff. Until someone captures Virginia, and they force him to kill in exchange for her freedom. And then it says, oh, and did we mention that Virginia is a sex doll? Listen, this is some of the most graphic novel stuff that I've ever read. Very like heavy on the murder. There's a lot of decapitated heads in this, a lot of like graphic murder, and trigger warning for murder, sexual assault, murder, and just a lot of bloodiness on this pages. And I thought it was fucking weird and entertaining and just too short. I would have liked like 6 more books this size of like this character and the character development. So it's kind of like one of those things that was like, oh, this was too fast. Like this is a graphic novel where I'm like, ooh, give me more of this fucked up world, you know? I don't even know if I can show you guys anything. Actually, I'll show you guys a still from the very back. One of the last pages where they turn like the editors into it's very graphic. This is not a book to read if you are like 12. Unless you're like a really screwed up 12-year-old. Happen to find it anywhere, pick it up, look through it. It's kind of a wild story, but interesting. So if you like sort of the looks of inside the mind of a serial killer, then you might like that. Getting into 4-star books, the first one was again a TBR star pick. That was Foolish Hearts by Emma Mills. So this follows Claudia, who ends up accidentally listening in on these 2 girls at her school breaking up. And so she kind of carries this like secret and whatnot, and then it's sort of a unexpected friendship kind of book where it's like you're not supposed to be friends but they end up being friends, and there's like a romance involved and like family stuff too. Just kind of like a coming of age like teenage story with a little bit of a romance sprinkled in. I thought it was just really nice. Like it was just like a nice story to read. It was cute. It was a nice like refresher from like a lot of the heavy shit that I read. I don't know, there's really not much more to it. Like that's not necessarily the deepest book in the world, but it was just kind of lovely. So next 4-star is again one that I picked from the TBR Star Jars, that is Extraordinary Means by Robin Snyder. Okay, here's the thing, I keep wanting to say extraordinary, but it's like extraordinary. Does anyone else do that? My brain. So this follows a teenage boy named Lane who ends up with a type, this is like a fake thing in the book, ends up with a type of tuberculosis where they get sent to a like tuberculosis sanatorium or like quarantine basically for all these teenagers who have this disease that they need to sort of monitor and control basically. So they go there and like he is struggling with the fact that like he wants to do good in his schoolwork, he wants to get out of this place, but is sort of not dealing with the reality of his sickness, which is fascinating, really cool. And then obviously, you know, they meet somebody, there's love, and there's some death in here, there's some grief in here. It says, you know, for people who like John Green, and it's like, yeah, I can see that, but like I actually kind of like this better because it was a little bit less manic pixie kind of dream girl as it was just sort of an accurate look at the denial of sickness, which is sort of interesting. Didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. I listened to it on mostly audiobook and really enjoyed it. So if you're looking for something with a little bit of a twist to the sort of YA romance, friendship, coming of age kind of story, do recommend. So moving on to a bit of a darker YA book that I read. I listened again to the audiobook of Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. Now I met Tiffany, she's fantastic. I think I've said that like a bunch of times now. She's really smart and just like great to hear her speak. I went to a panel where she spoke about diversity in YA books, and it was just wonderful. The thing with this is that it is not a story that I can relate to in any sense, but it was one that was important for me to read. I was happy to pick this up, especially during Black History Month, because it was just a really wild story. So this follows the story of Mary, who is 15 or 16, I believe, when the story starts, and when she was 9 years old, she is accused of killing a white baby, and so she goes to baby jail and then ends up in this group home where she now is pregnant, and sort of what that means for her and her baby and the horrible things that she has to go through and the struggle that she has to go through, especially, you know, going into jail at 9. Listen, this was hard-hitting, this was deep, and like I said, something that I'm not familiar with any part of the story, but you're still trying to relate to this character, and the story is so important. It made me realize that this is someone's reality, and like that in itself made me cry like 4 times while reading it, because it's just hard, and it's hard to listen to. This is not a book that necessarily wraps up with any sort of happy ending as well, which is hard, but I wanted to let you guys know that if you think that there's going to be something like magical and life-changing at the end, probably not. This is going to be a book that you're going to read and you're going to kind of know that this is going to be consistently sad throughout the whole book. But if it's something that you're interested in reading and picking up, do, because it's just a story that's very important that more people read, and one that like I didn't realize that this is somebody's reality. So it's hard-hitting and emotional. Tiffany D. Jackson's writing is fantastic. This is the 2nd book that I've read of hers now, and I'll be picking up everything that she writes because I just adore her writing, and even though she writes about tough stuff, it's really good. So next 4-star book is one that was a bit lighter. This is The Field Guide to the North American Teenager by Ben Fleet. So this follows a black Canadian boy in Montreal, and he moves to Austin, Texas. So it follows him navigating the American school system, and so he keeps a little journal where he sort of like picks apart people that he sees, so like the cheerleaders and the football players and stuff like that. In that, it's him making friends and figuring out his place, and just whether or not he wants to stay there or go home, and like some family things as well. So yeah, like he has a really funny sense of humor in this. Like it's a very I could see why some people may not like his character, but I thought he was just really snarky, and it was probably my kind of sense of humor at that age as well. Not really taking himself too seriously, but then also, you know, getting himself in a little bit of trouble because of it. I really enjoyed this. Like, I saw this book everywhere. The hype for this was like huge, but it's actually really good and more of like a light coming of age story. I think if you are French Canadian, you need to pick this up, and then if you're somebody who maybe lives directly in like Austin, Texas, you should probably pick this up, because the pairing of French Canadian in Austin, Texas was really cool, and it made me really want to go there. I already had reasons as to why I wanted to go to Austin, and now I like really want to go there. So next 4-star book is a horror manga, and what a trip it was. That is Shiver by Junji Ito. This is just a collection of some of his most like freaky short stories. Now, let me just tell you, I'm gonna cover this guy's face because it actually fucking horrifies me. If you have, I think it's called trypophobia, my apologies, where you're freaked out by holes, no, just do not with this. Also, there is a short story in this that is heavy in suicide by hanging, so like just if that's something that is bothersome to you or triggering, note that as well. Just be very careful, tread lightly when entering into this. It's one thing to read something on the page, it's another thing to see it in actual imagery, so just a heads up. I don't want anybody to go into this and be like really truly like deeply bothered by it. Even me, like I kind of was looking through the stuff and I went, oh, like whoa. And though that's kind of what I like about Junji Ito's work, it's very horrifying. Like simply put, he definitely gets the job done, let me tell you. So yeah, there's a bunch of short stories in this, some of which I liked more than others, which sort of, you know, rounds out the 4-star rating. But overall, love the artwork, love the stories, love the like creativity of some of the stories. Wild. Like it breaks it down in these little spots in this book actually. Yeah, so it breaks down some of his notes when he's making these and like why he wrote certain stories and what it means. That I love. I love the insight as to why an author or artist makes art. Love that, and again, one of the reasons why I rated it really highly. Just note that like it's freaky as fuck, so just be careful. So next 4-star is another romance, again one that I read for Contemporary-thon. That is Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing. This is now, I believe, the 3rd book of hers that I've read, Evelyn Hugo being one, and One True Loves being the other one. Now, I did like both of those books more than I like this one. However, this one did get to me. I thought it would, and it did. So this follows the story of Elsie, who is newly married to Ben. And I say newly like they got married last week. And so he goes out to get Fruity Pebbles and doesn't come back. He dies. And that's like chapter 1, and I was bawling on the bus in chapter 1, so that's great. From there, it sort of is 2 narratives, like one where it goes through their relationship, and then one after his death, and dealing with the fact that she was so new to his life and her grief because of it, being a new wife, and like I can't even talk about this fucking book. If you're a person who gets utterly terrified of the feeling that like your loved one is gonna go out and then just not come back, maybe don't read this, because I have that fear all the time. A little bit of separation anxiety, you know? And so, like, I was definitely, like, halfway through this book and, like, was crying, came to bed, and just, like, hugged Jeff. And he's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, and I'm just... gave me some feels. Look at, like, what to do after. And that's not what happens in a lot of books. Like, a lot of books, you know, something happens maybe halfway through or in, like, the 3rd act. Whereas this one, it's, like, chapter 1... what are we gonna do after that? And it's just a really good look at grief, so I suggest that if you can handle it. I almost couldn't, so just letting you know. Alright, so we have 3 books left, and then finally I get to go drink some tea, because my voice is just hanging on by a thread. So my 4.5-star book, oh boy, where do I get started with this one? Just gonna talk about it. It's Radiance by Catherine M. Valenti. Now, this book is so many things and is so weird. This is the one where it says, Radiance is a deco-punk, pulp, sci-fi, alt-history, space opera mystery set in a Hollywood and solar system very different from our own. Now, what? I read that and went, oh yeah, like I can read this, I'll make sense of this book. No, not really. This, I don't know how to describe this fucking book. Emily, where are you? Possibly Lit made me read this. Like, basically, I saw her talk about this and I went, this seems wild. She rated it 5 stars and she didn't really know how to describe it. And honestly, having read it, I sent her a message on Twitter and I was like, what did I just read? Why did I like it? I don't understand what's going on. The best way that I can describe this is you are trying to figure out what happened to this filmmaker while the book is trying to find out what happened to this filmmaker while you're trying to figure out this book. And in that, they travel, it's alt history, so in the book, humans, I guess, can like travel to all the different planets, and they're shooting films on all these planets, and the way that they're described is just like mind-blowing. Some of the passages in this, it makes no sense, but it's beautiful all the same. It's told in different perspectives, in like different formats, in like hopping from, you know, this timeline to this to that, and I don't understand what I read when I read this, and at no point when reading this did I go, this is a book that I get. But when it was done, I somewhat got it. If that makes... Listen, this is truly a book that you will have to read for yourselves to see if you like it, to see if you understand it, and then after you've read it, please come talk to me because I don't understand. The best way that I can describe it, it's unlike anything I've ever read. The second that I put it down and finished reading it, I wanted to read it again in hopes that I would understand it more. But it's that book that I know if I were to start it again and reread it again and again and again, I don't think I'll understand it more, and that's okay. Yeah. Emily, what did you do to me by suggesting this book? It was on my list of potential 5-star books, and it was very nearly there. I just think that it truly does need a reread for me. And then I would appreciate it that much more having finished it and knowing sort of what I'm getting into. Maybe upon reread I could like piece some things together. I don't know. I fucking loved it. I have no idea what this book was. There's my review of that. Don't know what to tell you folks, like, it's a weird one. Alright, so finally moving on to my 2 5-star books before my voice just craps out. My first 5-star book of the month is one of my tomes, one of my Stephen Kings. Hell yeah, finally another 5-star Stephen King. I'm fucking pumped about it. I think my last 5-star King was Salem's Lot, actually. And I've liked other works by him, but nothing that is like 5-star, hands down, like a favorite until now. So that is Christine. Big, chunky book. Fuck, man. This book is like 800 pages, 750, I think. And so here's the thing. All I knew about this book before getting into it was that Christine is a haunted car. A killer car, rather, that like wants to kill people. That's all I knew. And so for me, in my brain, I went, how the hell is Stephen King going to write like 800 pages about a killer car? Well, listen. This is everything I love about Stephen King wrapped up into one. I love his world building. I love it when he writes small towns, and I love it when he sort of drags stuff out. Now, what I mean by that is Stephen King, in his descriptions, can write the simple things and write it for 400 pages and I'm not bored. To me, nothing majorly big happens in this book until literally 400, 500 pages into it. However, for the first 400, 500 pages, I was never bored. It never felt like, oh, I just read 500 pages of world building or 500 pages of nothingness. When in reality, you kind of did. You kind of did read 500 pages of not much is happening. You know, building up characters, obviously, but like nothing, like the pivotal climax has not happened yet. And yet I'm like, la la la, just reading, just enjoying the ride. Literally, pun intended. This is great. And then like the actual little subtle things that like Christine the car does, and the way that like the car makes people feel, and like the uneasiness around the car, fantastic, so good. At no point when reading this book could I not picture the exact setting that it was getting taken place in. Like it just, this is to me, this is why I love Stephen King right here, and it just like fills me with so much joy to find another Stephen King book that I'm like, yes, this one. It is so good. It's just so good. It's just so good. It's just so good. I loved all the characters in it. I loved Christine as a character. Like I said, I loved how the car even being near people would make people feel. Yeah, I like this a lot. I also really do think that Nosferatu by Joe Hill may have pulled slight inspiration from this. Like, I mean, obviously it's his dad's book, but like there was a lot of things having read Nosferatu and then reading this that I went, ah. So anyway, without going too much into that, I will have a Stephen King Sunday about this, you know, eventually. My nose is dripping. I'm sick. I don't know what to tell you guys. I will have a Stephen King Sunday all about this, but this is my first 5-star book of the month, and what I thought was going to be the best book that I read all month, until I read this book. So let's get into it, shall we? This is my favorite book that I read in the month of February. Deserves all the stars. It's fucking incredible. Yeah, you should read it. That book is A Heart in the Body in the World by Dub Coletti. Took me a whole month to realize what the title was. I've said it wrong about 800 times. So this is a YA book about a girl named Annabelle who because of a reason that you come to find out at the end of the book, which is why I'm not going to say it in this video, she decides to run and do like a long distance run. I forget where she runs from, but she runs like 2,700 miles up the coast to like Washington. I say coast, up that way to Washington. Is running to something and from something, and you discover throughout the course of the book what that is. The author sort of leads you in different ways so that you think it's one thing and maybe another thing, but what actually ends up happening at the end of this book is like startling. Like it's rough to read. So you get that very heavy, emotional, fantastic writing. The writing is so good. They're in like the absolute best writing I've ever read in a YA book. I knew 12 pages in when I cried the first time, and then when I cried 40 pages later, that I'm like, this is a book that I will continue to read, and just, it's beautiful. So, you know, you have that hard-hitting side, yet you have a playful side in it too, in her relationship with her family. She has her grandfather, her like Italian grandfather, that follows her in an RV, and maybe the best character. Sweet and nurturing and wonderful, and his sort of sideline story was just great. And so I like it when a book can pair, like, I'm gonna dump this heavy subject on you, but then also break it up with a little bit of like lightness, you know, and this book just did that so well. The ending, you will need to read through to find out what happened. I didn't get spoiled for it, which is one of the reasons why it was perfect in my eyes. So I'm not going to do it here. And know that if you want to read this book, be trigger warned for certain things, but maybe go on Goodreads and find out. But try not to spoil yourself if you think you can handle it, because it makes the reading experience just that much more powerful. Absolute 5-star book. So is Christine. You know, I have this little list of my favorite books each month, and it was really hard to like pick between these two, but I just know in my eyes I'm probably going to read another 5-star King, but I'm not going to read another 5-star book quite like this. I rated that one my top book of the month. Those are all of the 13 books that I read in the month of February. Leave me any comments down below. Do you agree, disagree of any of my ratings? I don't know, have a discussion. I love these videos, you guys know, and I'm sorry that this is forever long, but I have a lot of things to say. Yeah, I'm gonna go nurture my chest and my voice, and yeah, hopefully you guys like this video, and I'm doing good, and until my next one, I will talk to all of you soon. Bye.